We're looking at Practice Test 2, the Math No Calculator section, specifically Heart of Algebra questions, and there are 8 of them. Number 1. If 5x plus 6 is equal to 10, what is the value of 10x plus 3? To solve this, we begin with this equation here on the left. Anyone know what to do there? It's a two-step equation, so we're going to get x by itself and find a value, which we will then plug into this quantity on the right, 10x plus 3. So we have 5x plus 6 is equal to 10. We're going to follow the reverse order of operations. So first thing we will do is subtract 6 from both sides, and we have 5x is equal to 4. We'll divide both sides by 5, which cancels that out, and we're left with x is equal to 4 over 5. So we'll take this answer, move it over here, clear our board, and plug it into 10x plus 3. So 10 multiplied by the fraction 4/5 plus 3. Well, I can multiply straight across the top and then divide if I like. 10 times 4 is 40, divided by 5 is 8. There's a variety of methods. We'll go with that one. And when I add straight across, I get 11. For number 2, x plus y is equal to 0 and 3x minus 2y is equal to 10. Which of the following ordered pairs, x, y, satisfies the system of equations above? Given that the coefficients of the x and y terms in this first equation here are both 1, that's where I'm going to start. I'll solve for one of the variables and plug it into the second equation. I could solve for x or y, it doesn't really matter. Let's just pick one. We'll say we solve for x. To do so, we're going to subtract a y from both sides, which cancels it out on the left, and we're left with x is equal to a negative y. Let's take that value, put it up here, and we'll plug that into the other equation, which means everywhere there used to be an x, like here next to the 3, we're going to replace it with what x is equal to. So 3 multiplied by a negative y minus 2y is equal to 10. If I multiply that, I get negative 3y minus 2y is equal to 10. If I combine like terms, I get negative 5y is equal to 10. Divide by negative 5 on both sides, and I get y is equal to negative 2. You'll notice there are 3 different answers that have a y value of negative 2. So this one I will have to plug back into the original equation to find my x. So it doesn't matter which equation I choose. I could choose the top one, the bottom one, or one of my equations that I used along the way. The top one looks like it'll be a little bit easier to solve, so let's go ahead and choose that one. X stays the same, but instead of adding y, I'm going to add a negative 2. Everything else stays the same. So to solve this, I'll add 2 to both sides, canceling that out, and I get x is equal to 2. B was the only choice that met both conditions. Number 3. A landscaping company estimates the price of a job in dollars using the expression 60 plus 12 NH, where N is the number of landscapers who will be working, and H is the total number of hours the job will take using N landscapers. Which of the following is the best interpretation of the number 12 in the expression? For those of you more experienced with linear growth, you may notice that in the equation 12 is multiplied both by N and by H. So A jumps out as an answer because $12 is multiplied per hour and per landscaper. However, we can rule out B, C, and D by using counterexamples as well. For B, they say that a minimum of 12 landscapers is required. But is it possible to charge for a job that requires, say, 2 landscapers working 5 hours each? Yes, this part here, the N, which is the number of landscapers, does not have to be a 12. It could be any number, a smaller number. Or for choice C, here is how the equation would look with 2 landscapers, which is emphasized here, and the hour increases from 1 to 2. And we'll see that the price does not increase $12 just because we increase the hour by 1. For D, here's one example where 2 workers work for 3 hours. This variable h, we can plug in any number we want, doesn't have to be 12.
Number 6. In the xy plane above, and actually it's to the left, line L is parallel to line K. What is the value of P? Because these two lines are parallel, what do we know about their slopes? They're the same. So we're going to start by using the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and we're going to plug in these values to figure out what the slope is. So we get 2 minus 0 divided by 0 minus negative 5. And that's a really common mistake right there, is people forget about that negative and the subtraction that they need both. So on the top we get a 2, and on the bottom, since we're taking 0 minus the negative 5, it actually makes them both positive, and we get a 5, a slope of 2/5. To figure out the value of P, we're going to plug this point into y equals mx plus b. So what values do we know? We know that our y value is 0. We know that our slope, we just figured it out from the other line, is 2/5. We know that our x-coordinate is p, and our y-intercept we see over here, where the line crosses the y-axis, is negative 4. Next up, let's add 4 to both sides. Cancels out on the right, and we get 4 is equal to 2/5 p. To cancel out this 2/5, we can multiply by the reciprocal, multiply by 5 over 2. And let's do the same on the other side. Let's multiply by 5 over 2. And here the 2's cross out and the 5's cross out. We could change this 4 to a 4 over 1 and multiply straight across the top and the bottom. And we get 20 over 2 is equal to p. Well, 20 divided by 2 we can solve. That is just 10.
Number 8. NA is equal to 360. The measure A in degrees of an exterior angle of a regular polygon is related to the number of sides n of the polygon by the formula above. If the measure of an exterior angle of a regular polygon is greater than 50 degrees, what is the greatest number of sides it can have? There are 2 equations we can pull out of this problem. The one they give us at the top, that NA is equal to 360. And within the problem, they tell us that the angle is greater than 50 degrees. If we solve this equation on the left for A will be equal to whatever's on the other side, and we can substitute that in for A over here in this equation. Let me show you what I mean. Let's divide both sides by n, which cancels this out, and we get that A is equal to 360 divided by n. So since this is the same thing as A, we can plug this in over here and replace A. So in other words, 360 divided by n is greater than 50. To get n by itself, this is a 2-step equation. First thing we can do is multiply both sides by n to get n out of that fraction. And we're left with 360 is greater than 50n. Then we can divide both sides by 50. And this gives us 7.2 is greater than n. Or another way of saying that would be that n is less than 7.2. If we go back to our answer choices, what's the largest possible number of sides that's less than 7.2? C. Number 9. The graph of a line in the xy plane has slope 2 and contains the point 1, 8. The graph of a second line passes through the points 1, 2 and 2, 1. If the two lines intersect at the point AB, what is the value of A plus B?
We often use slope-intercept form to represent linear equations. However, a different way to represent a linear equation is in standard form, which is ax plus by is equal to c. Oftentimes x has to be multiplied by some number, or y multiplied by some number. But if we take a look at this second line, we see that if we take 1 plus 2 we get 3. And if we take 2 plus 1, we also get 3. Thus, we can write the equation as x plus y is equal to 3. And this point AB is on the second line, since it's where the two lines intersect. So therefore, A plus B, which would be the values of x and y on that line, are also going to be equal to 3. And we could find our answer that way. Number 16. The sales manager of a company awarded a total of $3,000 in bonuses to the most productive salespeople. The bonuses were awarded in amounts of $250 or $750. If at least one $250 bonus and at least one $750 bonus were awarded, what is one possible number of $250 bonuses awarded? The good news is, because this is a bubbling answer, there's actually more than one correct answer. We only need to find one of them and then we can stop. So let's take the larger number, 750, and we'll plug in a 1 for it, because at least one $750 bonus had to be awarded. Does $250 fit evenly or multiply evenly into what's left over? Let's find out. Let's subtract 750 from both sides. This goes away, and we're left with 2250 is equal to 250x. Before we divide by 250, if we wanted to make our lives a little easier, we could take a 0 away from both. Does not change the problem because we're simply dividing by 10. And if we divide by 25 on both sides, we see that 25 does go evenly into 225. In fact, it goes in 9 times. And if you wrote 9, that's one of the correct answers. If we started over and instead of plugging in one $750 bonus, we plugged in a 2, we see then that multiplies and gives us 1,500, which is what we subtract from both sides. So this part goes away. On the left side we have 1,500 equals 250x. Again, we can get rid of a 0 just to make our division a little bit easier. And when we do that, we are going to get 6 is equal to x, which would be another possible answer. If you were to bubble that in, you'd get it correct. And the final possible answer is if you plug in a 3 for $750 bonuses. When we multiply that out, we get 2250. We're going to subtract that from both sides, which cancels out over here on the right. We're going to do our division trick. We're going to divide both by 10. Okay, 75 divided by 25 is a little bit easier. And it turns out our final possible answer is 3. Number 20. ax plus by is equal to 12. 2x plus 8y is equal to 60. In the system of equations above, a and b are constants. If the system has infinitely many solutions, what is the value of a over b? In order to have infinitely many solutions to a system, both equations have to be equivalent. So the first step we can take is fixing that 12 is not equal to 60. So we can take this top equation and multiply the entire thing by 5, and that gives us 5ax plus 5by is equal to 60. And if we put that right next to 2x plus 8y is equal to 60, we see that here on the right they are equivalent. And here on the left there's an x, there's an x, there's a y, there's a y. So 5a here has to be equivalent to 2, and 5b has to be equivalent to 8. So we can set up these two equations like this and divide by 5 to solve. We get that a is equal to 2 over 5, and we get b is equal to 8 over 5. Writing something like 2/5 divided by 8/5 is kind of confusing. It's a little bit easier if we use that trick where you can instead multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by 5 over 8. Because multiplying fractions is actually pretty easy. You multiply straight across the top and you get 10, and you multiply straight across the bottom and you get 40. Divide out by 10, and there's your final answer, 1 over 4.